episode 117 of Above Ground Podcast, continuing our special series of thrival stories for September Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. This week we have The Day After Yesterday.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast. Above Ground Podcast.
Because you can't serve below.
That's right, Timmy. You down with TPP? You know who that is.
You know me.
You know me. That's right. Not show friends, it's show business. That's right. That's
He's
my
back,
buddy
ladies and
TPP.
gentlemen.
That's I've been on a long sabbatical, a self-imposed sabbatical.
It's all right. You got to take those sabbaticals once in a while, man. You got
That's
to walk
right.
it.
We do. This morning we are joined for an interview from an anonymous guest. She chooses to remain anonymous because there's a lot of things involved in her story. She lost a spouse to suicide. There's all sorts of entanglements in her story, and we're going to let her share a piece of herself with us today. And I wanted to say thank you so much for trusting us to be a part of your story and sharing it with us. We really do appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. I think it's really important what you're doing. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you
real
very
quick,
much.
real quick, actually, before we jump in, to any like new listeners or just to everybody in general, but I think if we do have a few followers that do listen every week, they kind of they know that we talk openly and real and raw, and we don't usually hold back or anything like that. And just a heads up that this episode is going to have, some talk of suicide, some talk of severe mental illness, and just wanted to throw that around out in the unity.
mm-hmm.
I see the kitties. Mine's not coming in. Fernando's not making a visit this morning. He's shut out. He's shut out. Yeah, he's shut out of the studio this morning.
Yes.
So
And
I will
certainly some triggers there. Yeah, most
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I will just say, how are you?
I've heard other people talk about when you're dealt a certain hand, you don't really have much of a choice especially with children involved, you don't have a choice in having to conduct your life a certain way, or it will just be all downward. So overall, I am good. I have a very happy, stable life. Impossible to carry on as though I have a similar story to your average person, because I don't. But a good amount of acceptance. I'm doing well, especially this year during COVID. I'd say that I've weathered possibly better than a lot of other people.
Excellent. And that's good to hear. So have I. The forced sort of slowdown of everything for me was kind of a welcome thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was for a lot. I'm hearing that.
Yeah, I know it was. I know it's been difficult for a lot of the people that we're involved with on a regular basis, but for me personally, it was good. Let's start wherever you want to start. Where would you like to take this story from and lead it to?
Okay, so I don't think it would be possible to just isolate the loss of my husband as being the only relevant mental health issue in my life. It certainly was not. At the time he died, I know family thought the phone call was going to be about me, not about him. That came as a surprise. I think a little bit of a backstory. I've lived all over the place. I'm from upstate New York. Like a lot of people, and similar to your podcast there, Will, family neglect, really being on your own at a young age, dealing with mental health issues around depression, anxiety, the self-worth that we learn from our parents when that isn't there the way it's supposed to be. We fill it in with other things. So that's a good place to start. I say that I escaped my life, and I certainly did. Was somebody that ran away as a teenager, ran away again, but landed accidentally in Broadway theater world, ran away again to California, to New Orleans, to lived in the Midwest, lived overseas in England, and through the rounds, I think I was escaping the mental health issues of my youth and trying to make sense of that you never can. And then some major things happened in my life, particularly a head-on car accident with a wrong-way driver in 2002 that altered the course of my entire life. And I know that was a significant impact on my husband at the time too, who was an Air Force pilot back then.
Wow.
So yeah, you have a laundry list of items to choose from.
Well,
to
so
focus on any one thing. Yeah.
I want to go back to the beginning for you. So you said you were running away to escape your mental health problems or your mental health challenges. And I don't know what the extent of those mental health challenges are. So I don't want to say that they're problems per se, but they're challenges.
Sure.
So when did this start? When did you notice that you were different or something that was not normal compared to what you thought it was when you were a kid?
I remember as far back as I can being a child and just having this inner cloud that would come over my mind and my thoughts and my soul. And I knew it wasn't normal like all of the other children around me. There was something profoundly dark, terrified, desperate, and an inner sadness. When I was 12, I had a surgery on my eye. I had a benign tumor, and they took that out. It's a hereditary type of tumor that a couple of cousins had also had. And I just remember the family influence of, oh, she may die too. There was no chance of dying. There's a bit of that Munchausen mixed in with the narcissism and the need to control.
Sure.
So I think I think that there was the predisposition to it, whether it was organic or through nurturing. But then around that time, 12, 13 of that surgery, that inner darkness, that macabre kind of foreboding feeling was sticking around, and it was going to be like a major character in my life from that point on. So I had several episodes of what later became a major depressive disorder, was hospitalized once myself for suicidal ideation within a following attempt. I had a few people up there kind of intervene a little bit. But to get back to your question about running away, after the depression kind of took hold in my life and was a firm, solid thing, and I had been diagnosed with cyclothymia also on top of it, which is a bit like subclinical bipolar light.
Okay.
You know,
I've never heard that clinical term before, honestly. So that was okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Me neither. Yeah. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, cyclothymia, it's sort of the cycling dysthymic disorder.
Okay.
It can come with depression.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Anhedonia is a huge component, just complete loss of interest in anything. Depression is the one illness that I say robs you of your ability to overcome it. You know, the very things that are tools to fight to fight it off and to regain that stability that we all need is what is removed with depression. So it isn't as simple when you're in it to just say, get some exercise, socialize, eat your well-balanced diet, to maintain the structure that you need to have a good, stable life. And being at a young age, didn't really have the tools coming from family around me. You're on your own.
Do you have a familial history of mental illness? Like, is there distinct parts of your first part of your family or going into your like cousins or something?
It isn't known. I know on my father's side, there are some cousins that have had some major depression issues. On my mother's side, they are still caught up in that 1940s, 50s. Oh, if you'll cry, they'll come and get you. Talking bad about someone that has something attached to them, speculating about someone's mental health all the time, writing someone off as crazy. So there is a huge pressure, and they're high achievers. They're very successful, a lot of them on that side. There's a lot of pressure to maintain that status quo. Life is wonderful. We're all good. Let's talk about our successes.
Which is a component in driving that, mental crisis, mental health crisis at some point for someone, because you can't keep up that charade forever, because that's really just a charade of trying to feel better than you are and just getting yourself drowned in your own success or your own whatever it is.
Exactly. But we normalize it if it's from a parent. So in my circumstances, it's been with hindsight and having to take the no contact approach. A lot of children of narcissists eventually do have to do that. The other stigma with society is that your parent is your parent and it's your job to love them. So we don't understand if we have a parent that's completely toxic to us and has maintained such control over our own lives. It's a barrier. We can't live our own lives until we've had some distance. We wrestle control back. But it's been in these last 10 years of having no contact where the true psychiatric disorder of that one side has become a lot more illuminated. I can look back now and say, okay, the first time I in the 80s had the gothic face and hair on and came out into the kitchen, it was abnormal for my mother to hide behind the kitchen island and start crying that there's a demon. That's not because she believed it. It's because it was a sick act of, I'm going to make you scared to control your behavior.
Wow.
I'm going to,
yeah. Yeah, that's so twisted right there.
Oh, very twisted. Don't go to any doctors that she will know about because there'll be a medical release written and signed. Checks written in my name. I think I was even voted for by the opposite party that I was affiliated with at one point. So
may I ask you this? Are your parents, you were born up here. So are they sort of like these, are they religious nuts? Are they like, and I don't mean, and I'm not meaning any disrespect, but like when you hear those kinds of things, like you think of cultish behavior, like it's beyond my scope. I'm grateful that I had the experience I had, because I was able to experience a lot of my own and figure out my own stuff for myself that I really enjoyed. But I'm so grateful I did not have a controlling, like, you have to do this kind of, in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't say that there's any extreme religious influence. There are moderate Catholics. One is more pseudo than the other.
Okay.
When it comes to narcissism, somebody with actual narcissistic personality disorder will use anything as a tool that alters the perception of the people around them.
Absolutely. And gaslighting is the perfect way to do it, man. That's what they do.
Yeah, at triangulation, they operate very covertly. For instance, if I were a narcissist, okay, and I had a beef with you, Tim, and I were talking to Will, I wouldn't just say, he was being a jerk. He did this thing to me. Oh, I'm so mad, and deal with that very authentically. I would deal with it by, this is if I'm a narcissist, how they think. They go to Will and they say something that will influence his opinion of you without saying it directly. So I don't know what is up with Tim. He's acting kind of funny. He's trying to pull back. I noticed his teeth. There's something wrong with his tooth. He's eating his off. I'll imply so that person comes to the conclusion I want them to on their own. When you deal with a narcissist, that is what they're a master of. They triangulate everything, control, and that comes from a very deep-seated pathological type, there's some thinking that it's even in the brain structure, excess white matter to gray, I believe. I'm sure you have a lot of professionals that can hear that and look it up or vouch for me. So yeah, total lack of empathy, but masters of control.
Wow.
Masters of manipulation, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, they are.
I think going back a little bit just on kind of Will's question, I don't mean to answer it for you, but I think just from what I have heard, if your parents or whoever are stuck back in the 30s, 40s, 50s or whatever, a lot of times that you can't change that mindset, and especially if they're dealing with a personality disorder, they're stuck in that time. So if go back to that time frame and look at, look at the way the culture was, and look at the way that, the stigma and all the other, laundry list of things
in that time period. Dude, when you do peer work, like when you go through some of these classes about where this movement stemmed from, I mean, what they did to mentally ill people from the very onset was terrible. And
yes, absolutely.
And of course, and it was also a mark against the person, because there were literally like literal rules set up for females that were treated differently than men. And then same thing with like other people that didn't look like us, like that. I mean, they're legitimate things that were set up to literally streamline this thing to where it was about control. It was always about control. It was never about making anybody better. Never.
Kind of sounds like we're going back to that spot, huh?
I don't think we've ever gotten out of it. I think it's just morphed into something that looks more like our time frame, and they're using the tools of our time to do it to us.
Right.
I mean, look at the period we're coming out of for the last.
Said.
Well
said. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of stories of from staff in psych hospitals where they enjoy like dating someone for a takedown.
Sure.
So yeah, there's an ultimate act of control and power.
Absolutely.
A big influence.
And again, when you're inundated with day after day, there's never a loss for people to check themselves into the hospital. Never. So it's like, people start to get these power trips, and they start to feel this like nonsensical power that I can fix you. And again, that's not what it's about. And I'm sorry.
I think
I apologize for going off on.
It's all right. I think that might be a product of their own desensitization that happens after a while.
Yeah.
It's like written into mental health care right now. I know there's a huge effort to extract our critical thinking from it, but I wonder if we ever will, with just that human tendency to desensitize over time to whatever our field is like that.
Well, I mean, if you look at, we go back to Nazi Germany. We desensitized millions of people to murder another group of people. So I think we can desensitize ourselves to anything if we want to. I mean, if you see it enough and you're told enough about it, like you can desensitize people. I think that's where the true power is in the good fight of you not being desensitized and staying awake enough to see that it's really just a control thing. Now, it doesn't matter which side it's coming from. It's like this constant tug of war where you have to sort of stay in the middle of it and have the wherewithal to be able to withstand whatever psychic battle is going on between your good and evil. And I don't know.
You're speaking to the Lucifer effect there, which Tim and I had addressed after meeting. We discussed a little bit, but yeah, that's how good people turn bad.
Yeah, well, I don't know what your stand is on Lucifer. I don't buy into this. I don't buy into this. Satan is the ultimate evil. Like I don't think Satan is anything more than Jesus is. They're just symbols.
I think it's just a term that whoever coined the phrase.
I've never heard of that. I don't think I've ever heard that.
I didn't either until she.
And I'm not saying I'm a Satanist, but it's just this bullshit of this one is the only one. Right. It's just like it's nonsense to me. But
it doesn't have anything to do with religion. Actually, I'll bring this up. So if anybody took Psych 101, chances are they learned about the Stanford Prison experiment, right? So that is where they took a group of people, and I think it was supposed to be for about 2 weeks' time. And they said, okay, you're going to be the prison guards and you're going to be the prisoners over here. And they gave them the uniforms. The experiment became so extreme where the people given the prison guard title and uniform became sadists, completely sadistic very quickly. They devolved into that. And the people given the title of prisoner became subservient to it and tolerated it. And I think they may have had some early Stockholm syndrome type symptoms developing also. But this is something that has fascinated me now for decades. The person who put on this study at Stanford University wrote a book called The Lucifer Effect. And it's based on how good people can turn evil. And a lot of that has to do with the division. So just a uniform, just a title. But we see that in our world today. If you're looking through the internet, through social media comments, people say things now they would never have said even 10 years ago, openly wishing death and ill will on someone. We also have Lucifer effect through road rage when we're driving in a car. And I personally believe the masks contribute to it also, because it's anything that breaks down that human face-to-face, eye-to-eye relation, and that with it where that is the standard and the norm. It's anything that's corrupting that. So that's where the term the Lucifer effect actually comes from.
I like it. We just got a schooling right there. Or I should say, I just got a schooling, which I need every once in a while, because I've learned that the most I don't know anything is I don't know nearly as much as I thought I knew. So it's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, sure. What it shows that there's this effect that is coming out of people separate from us unto itself. It's just this like an epidemic, like you had mass hysteria, you also have this. So I think of it as a very real social disease or disorder.
Sure. And nobody's immune to this. Nobody's immune to this because we've all had our own experiences during this time.
When you have
dude, you like to blame the media all the time, dude.
It's the culture. But here's the thing, the culture.
Yeah, but here's the thing, dude. Dude, they create the culture. Yeah. If you allow them to pull the culture, then they create the culture.
You're right, but there's a lot of people that can't think for themselves.
Well, there are, but I think I think again though, you I love this like swath. Like we got to blame this, we got to blame that.
I'm not blaming them, but they're a part of it.
If we did the self work, we wouldn't buy into any of it.
Dude, it's like we just changed roles. I've been saying that fucking for years, and now you're saying it. Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you, but I'm telling you, there's people that are just so lost. They turn on the TV and they actually think that what they're seeing is real and factual.
Absolutely, and it's not. None of it is.
No.
But again, we all are susceptible to that because we all buy into our own. We all buy into our own biases at some point, just because we've seen the proof of it because our perception shows us the proof that it's, oh, see, that's happened now. So I've willed that into happening, just like the bad stuff that we do. You know what I mean? Where it's like me, I caused myself all this aggravation about the 100th episode. Now the 100th episode is already blown by and now I'm fine again. So I've caused myself all this inner turmoil for no reason.
Yeah, but I think it's even a step further than that. I mean, you have like, you're talking like food companies that make the food that we eat, and most of people don't even question it. You're like, oh, well, they're big corporations. They're not going to poison us.
Right. No, right.
Why
right.
would they do that? And it's like, are you kidding me? Look into it. And even when the facts are presented, some people just, I don't know. They've been indoctrinated for so long.
It's like personal responsibility versus, well, you always hold the personal responsibility versus that social engineering that may be going on without ever being intentional. It's just that zeitgeist of that moment that takes hold. Right. But I have no doubt the media influences us a lot more than most people are aware of.
I'm definitely not in disagreement with that, but I think it's really easy to blame one thing or another when it's really a combination of all those. When it's really a combination of all those things, that makes it very hard to break through. Because again, you got the media involved with big pharma, and then you got big pharma involved with big ag. Then you got big ag involved with, their shareholders, and everything's tied into this. And it's like, we're just pawns in this. We're just the collateral in this collateral damage. How many points can you score a game? Sort of.
Yeah. Shareholders, big word.
Yeah. Big. Yeah. That's about as big as it gets on a Sunday morning for me.
Well, I think it all comes down to the shareholders. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. For another few pennies, we can squeeze them for another Oreo cookie. All right. I'm sorry. We kind of got off on the, let's swing back around because we've talked a lot about narcissism and stuff. So you've run away, and to hear your story though, you've had quite an adventure upon yourself. Do you consider all the things you've been through a blessing, a curse, a little bit of both? Have you had time to sit with that and work through your grief? And
it's a little bit of both. I have, and I'll likely always have, an envy of people who could stay where they're from, have their friend group, have a family. I don't have that. I've had a lot of moves. I've lived overseas, on the West Coast, on the East Coast, up north, up south. I've reached a level of comfort, but I've had to truly define my own story year by year. You can't really choose the hand that you're dealt. But I don't know if I answered your question with that or not. We always say that recovery is just uncovering what's always been there. And I always say that recovery from any crisis is fluid. So not every day is going to be a smooth sail with the current. Some days you're going to fight the current. Some days that boat's going to capsize. It just depends on where you're at in your journey. I just wonder if you've made peace with the things that have happened to you. And peace, I think that I'll always be trying to figure it out, especially with that mother-daughter dynamic. I'm a mother myself, so it just doesn't fit. I can't make it logically fit into my brain that a mother would do harm, try and influence the life in a negative way of their own child, to try and control it, manipulate it, come between any relations they have. Dig, find dirt that you can use. Someone truly narcissistic will go as far as trying to get the court to do things their way. Every avenue you could think. I lived through that. That I'll never quite make sense of, but I have learned to accept the facts as the facts, keep the distance. I do email that person so that, I know you guys just did the episode on forgiveness, but that's so one day when that person passes away, I will know I did what I could without harming myself to have some sense of peace. But it will always be there. It's not, I don't think it's ever going to be, you just reach one day and you get it and you've figured it out. It is not a normal hand that I was dealt, as a lot of people have, So
So going back to that, when was your first personal suicide attempt?
I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, 14.
Wow. Was there a particular event that brought that on, or was it just that cloud of darkness that you just couldn't seem to shake?
It was the suitcase effect, as they like to call it. Neglect, being on my own, conflicts coming up. I had some very personal things happen to me being that age and young, and in your early sexual development, sort of like the stars just aligned for me to not see any road out, not see any. I didn't have any hope, that I needed things that I would never get, and I didn't have the capacity to carry on in my life at all. I just was too young, too naive, too broken. No real, family support was not supportive. So yeah, that seems like a lifetime ago now.
I'm glad that you chose to stay. Thank you for choosing to stay and fighting the fight that you've been through. I know you may not feel that way all the time, that it's been worth it, because I know there's a lot more to your story than just the teenage years. So
Absolutely.
so were you hospitalized multiple times as a teenager, or was this a one-time thing and then you said, okay, if I stay here, something's gonna happen, so I gotta run? Was it?
I was hospitalized twice. Okay. So age 14 and then again age 16 for a couple weeks. It was actually somebody upstate there in that hardcore community would come to my hospital room every day with a pack of Lucky Strikes. Someone I barely know now, barely knew then, but just kind of came out of the woodwork. New Yorkers are a little bit like that. By the time I was 18 and able, had the ways and means to get a job, get the hell out of here, right? I'm out. I had someone enter my life that was incredibly intelligent, an old lawyer, pianist, philosopher, constantly reading, very observant, good person. And he would say, "It isn't you, it's your mother. It isn't you, it's your mother." And just constantly drill into my head that at some point you have to see a parent that raises you dysfunctionally as an adult looking at another adult. And that's where you begin to truly make peace. Not with the need of a child that keeps going back to the well. Yes, as a child, you have a child need, even as an adult, to go back to the well over and over. And the well is fucking dry, and it's always going to be dry. Right. You're not going to get the person to change. You're not going to have an enlightening moment where they understand. And you have to accept that. That's the real path forward. So setting that up and seeing it was about that, seeing this person as an adult, as a broken adult, that you just begin to walk that road of emotional independence, where you aren't going to the well anymore.
Yeah. In my own personal journey, I've been working on this a lot this last few years with my mom and stuff, and with my dad. Like, my dad and I are really close. My dad had his own struggles that, led him to want to drink too much and stuff. And I've realized that, we all have something that's in that haunts us from childhood. And I know he had a lot of stuff. And I know my mom had a lot of stuff, being, the first generation of like United States citizens, pretty much, because my great grandmother had gotten my grandmother out of France as Hitler was dropping bombs. So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that escape. But I also understand that there's that generational trauma that you carry, and whatever's locked my mother in her head for that type of disorder has to be super painful. And she had to be so unable to hold on to that it just kind of locked herself up. Because I kind of look at these disorders like the schizoaffect disorders and the schizophrenia, where you're so broken up into pieces. I kind of look at them as these disorders that people got locked into a specific time frame, and they can't seem to make they can't seem to make sense of now because they can't make sense with then. And it disorients them to the point of breaking into pieces. That's kind of the way I look at it, because that's just what I've observed.
And
It's scary.
there's possibly an epigenetic component to that also. So I know when they look at the families of Holocaust victims, it's 1-2 generations later, the epigenetic impact of trauma is showing to be more and more relevant from what I understand. Now, in evolutionary biology, there was it was called Lamarckian evolution, this idea, the giraffe had the long neck, does something so their neck is longer, then the baby is born with the longer neck. It's like passed on that way through events actually happening to you. And it was written off as bunk in the biology world, right? No, that doesn't apply. Lamarckian evolution, it doesn't count anymore.
Right, because they can't quantify it. They can't quantify it.
Yeah.
They can't put proof on it, because we want blind faith. We want to go to church and pray on Sunday, but we don't want to believe that the spirit world actually exists. It's
Right.
like, it's laughable.
But there's, genetics and experiences of our grandparents directly influencing who we are today. So we can see that now. Yeah.
Do you think you had mentioned a little earlier, you had mentioned kind of compare like acceptance. You had mentioned acceptance and looking at as like two grown adults. Do you think that just acceptance and kind of seeing it in that perspective was one of the main variables in you in healing and moving forward?
Yeah, so when I get an email like I did a few weeks ago, that's just completely crazy and unrealistic. Crazy in that it's intended to be harmful. Hey, I know you have these people in your life. When you went to see this person, they came and confided in me. When you went to that person, they came and confided in me. Rather than arguing it, like that is not true, that would be in one case illegal or out of the scope of practice of, say, a lawyer to turn and confide in you, and I'm an able-bodied adult. Those kinds of things, I don't react. I'm not emotionally reactive the way that I used to be. I don't bother arguing. I see it the way you would a patient that thinks the screens, slats of the screens are turning into snakes and talking to them. It's just, okay, all right, whatever you say, and I don't engage it. I'll respond maybe in another month with some event that happened and some updated photos of my daughter.
It's interesting.
Almost modeling the way it should have gone.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was recently introduced to Dr. Ramani, and she's like an expert on narcissistic behavior, narcissists, and I was watching this video, and it's her own little personal acronym for DEEP. She says, don't deep, and DEEP is don't defend, engage, explain, or personalize.
Exactly. Yeah, because they will target. They will find any little thing, and that'll be what they go on.
Yeah.
And just get spun up out of control on whatever's going on in their head at that time. Yeah.
Don't feed the animals.
Absolutely. Yep. Don't take the bait.
So
don't take the bait and set it up yourself. Just respond how you should with the kind of conversation that should have been going on, and that's it. And limit. You have to really limit, because they will. True narcissists will. They will mess up your whole world. If they have anybody that knows you and they find out, they will try and influence them. If they can get a hold of paperwork, mail, in the extreme cases like I had, they'll try and hold it, control it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Make it difficult for other people to be involved with you. So it becomes so uncomfortable for the rest of the family. They just kind of back away. So over the years, all they know of you over time is what came from the triangulator's mouth. And that was carefully crafted so that they could keep control.
Oh man,
We just lost a narcissist in our family recently. And it was so controlled that nobody was even told that the funeral was happening on our side of the family. Like, we were called immediately following the death, but nobody wanted us there to be involved. What a fucking stew we got, man.
I'll say, when it comes to funerals, I experienced a bit of that narcissism kind of invading my husband's funeral, because where I had my husband's side, the whole family was at my house, whether I wanted them there or not. They were family, my family, and they were going to be there. And this is not blood relatives, my in-laws. And they have been since that, through our whole marriage and before, where that parent, it's my mother, she managed to act like she was the director, like the theatrical director, but funny enough, keep everyone I was related to from my family away and out, and not really talking to me, just showing their face, following her lead, taking her instructions as though it had come from me, and staying away.
Wow.
That would risk the relations. They don't want people to know you on their own. They want to control it.
Right. They want to control the narrative because they're either hiding something, or they want to manipulate you, or they want to hide something from themselves. I think a lot of it is hiding something from themselves that they're too afraid to face.
That's usually with
narcissists. Whether it's a bad childhood and being neglected themselves or abused themselves, and learning those skills from the person that had ignored them.
Sure.
And then it carries on, and then they figure out new ways of developing the narcissism even deeper, I think, oftentimes.
Yeah, and it's one thing to say, like, date or marry a narcissist, you divorce them, you eventually start to identify behaviors that are unhealthy, you learn about codependency, it's like the normal. It's completely, if it's a parent and they're extreme, how do you know yourself? Everything you know of life, all your security, stability came from that person that created you. So it really is a little bit of like half the Gypsy Rose story in that regard, and half the mommy dearest. It's their world, and I'm in it, and they're going to be in charge of the whole thing.
And they're in charge no matter what.
So it isn't leaving a situation that collectively came together or just happened as an adult. It's extracting your roots to try and parent yourself the way that they didn't. And it takes years to even see that, to really see the depth of how sick it was.
I like the extraction of the roots. That's pretty.
Bingo.
Ding. I was very close to my sister-in-law. Like, she's become, over the last 22 years, and just one of the most important people in my life. She's like my sister. Early on, there was a huge influence from that parent, talking about religion. Keep your rosaries when she's around. She's poison. She'll bring poison into your life. You see, so anyone who is close to me, it was, who are you talking to? Who is that person? I know them. I'm gonna, it's very different.
So I gotta ask, just hearing some of that, if we can maybe, I don't know, fast forward a little bit, when with the tragedy surrounding your husband, did you get some, I don't even know the word I want to use, like accusations, backlash, or anything from other family? And
funny enough, I had my in-laws side, my husband and I went to college together. We were both pilots in the aviation world for a while.
Oh, you were as well?
Civilian, just private pilot. I stopped once he was commissioned, and then we were engaged, and I had my daughter.
Okay.
Our old friends from flight school all stayed close to me. People on his side, my family on his side, we're very close to them. I did find out through no less than two separate people. My mother had implied to my late husband that I was having an affair, which of course I was not. That was not the reason for his death. I don't know if it was a factor. It may have been, although we were pretty open with each other. I think that would have come up out of his mouth. He did wonder about different people in the job I was doing at the time, and I thought it was unusual suspicion. So I didn't have any accusations. Anybody that saw him and knew kind of what was going on for that year prior, then month, and say 3 weeks, they knew. Where the narcissistic parent, of course, it's a gold mine. They capitalize. They just, someone's death. Oh, and now give me your birth certificate, all of your social security. I'll hold it in my bond box for safety. You know, it was the way to step in and assume control.
Unbelievable.
Move back near your family. I couldn't help you when you were young, but I can now. And it was just an elaborate setup, you know, you take your kid to their lesson they go to, you hand the instructor $20, you find out down the road, you know, your mother's been paying, but by check every time. Oh, okay, got it. And then you hear, I think there's a little bit of an agenda going on with that person, you know. So, and there was, it was, my husband's death was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for them.
Wow. Now you had mentioned just now, like a year prior, was there, I don't want to say was there signs, but was there like, you know, an extra noticeable stress going on the year before?
There had been stress from the time of me getting hit in England. So that was 2002. It was an up and down road for a long time. 2007, things went well for me, which, you know, we thought it would be for both of us. I really came around with my health. I had gone to, I'm backtracking a little bit. I had gone to a Mayo Clinic program for people who had been injured, so they learned how to live naturally without going to pain doctors or anything like that. And I started thriving. My husband started just seeming like he was mad more at first. Like there was an argument, but I didn't know. There hadn't been an argument. He was just acting like there was some kind of strife between us. And it would be sporadic. We had 10 years together where we were very happy. He was a very nice guy, kind of broadly likable. You know, if you knew him, you would have liked him. He was funny and really huge heart. Would cry when I was in childbirth. He was the one to cry at the wedding. He, you know, always had a funny movie quote. But yeah, some of those behavioral changes, I can't quite put my finger on. It's closer to the actual event of him dying, where I look back and see very hallmark things that he was doing that don't make sense at the time when you're in them.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like touch and go, for where you look back even 5 years before or 10 years before they died. Was that a sign? Was that a sign? That's the stuff you'll always do.
I'm sure.
But,
yeah. You could beat yourself up.
Yeah. So a lot of just sleeping more. He started having a hard time getting up before 10, which was unusual for him.
That's a hallmark of depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
But then
and you know,
acting,
in men, anger can be another hallmark in depression, for sure.
Yeah, he was expressing all the hallmarks of depression, but whether he wanted to acknowledge that or not that's a different story.
He did acknowledge it. I found a therapist. He was a pilot. So they couldn't, at least at that time, I'm not sure about now, they couldn't go into a psychologist or a psychiatrist and say, hey,
because of his job.
It cost you your license, or you would need some kind of medical waiver to then be able to fly, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So we got a therapist involved, and he was going to him for a little while. He did start, I don't know, I'll just jump into, explaining really what that period of time was like. He would suddenly just changed, even pupils. He became more physical. He'd walk past me in the hall and knock into my shoulder. This isn't, oh, you're in a relationship with an abuser. No, this is my sweet, loving, devoted, loyal husband of 10 years, 9 years at that time. That's suddenly and radically different with their behavior. That's a cause for concern. And I was more concerned for him and what the hell was going on back then than I was thinking the way a woman would when a man does that to her.
I just wanted to ask a question. Was there any injury that he sustained head-wise or anything? Was he involved in the accident with you?
He was not in the accident. He was actually in South Africa at the time it happened, and they Red Crossed him back. I was in a military hospital overseas. He'd never broke a bone in his whole life. Okay. He died having never smoked a joint. We're talking, he was happy. He was funny, the kind of guy that his whole family just adores. Our friends adored him. And he just had this inner, it's not like he was acting out rage. It's as though he was spontaneously bubbling up, like a volcano, and then instantly fearful. You'd see in his eyes shock and horror about the reactions coming out of him that he didn't seem to be in control of.
Did he see service, combat at all?
Well, he was a pilot. He was not fighter. He was tanker.
Okay.
He did have a lot of time he was in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq too.
Okay.
Went to Saudi Arabia a lot. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So he was
exposed to things.
Okay, so he was definitely exposed to things, but
he was exposed to things more on the strategy side, and than on the ground. He was not, infantry. He wasn't stuck in Fallujah or anything like that. This was around men. Mm-hmm.
Going back a little bit to what you had said, it sounded like he was a pretty sensitive guy. Yeah. So in that aspect, when you feel such great love and you are able to show it, you have to think of the other side, because if you feel great love, at some point you're going to have to feel the great loss. And I understand that for sure.
Yeah, that's very well said, Tim. I had to just chime in with that. That was very well said. I like that.
Absolutely.
And obviously you said he was involved in the plan, so he was obviously a thinker. You got a thinker that's deep, sensitive. Our heads aren't always the warmest place to hide, I guess.
He wasn't one for, deep in terms of just by his nature. He was warm-hearted, good-spirited, good sense of humor, easy to get along with. He was not a deep thinker where if I asked him, hey, let's talk about the universe or life after death, I don't need to know that, kind of easygoing, didn't need a lot of contemplation in some areas at all. But yeah, super sweet and sensitive and involved. Yeah, but it was a complete personality change.
I wanted to swing her back around to something that you had said earlier. And the reason why I say this is because Tim and I experienced the loss of one of our really close friends 2 years ago to suicide. And we worked together. I actually went to school with this gentleman. And there's a lot of reasons that Tim and I are doing this is partly because of him. And he was a part of our circle for a very long time, but you had said that he was kind of they were expecting to get a phone call about you and not him.
Mhm.
Is there
Yeah.
is there like some sort of, and I don't mean to, I'm not insisting on anything, but is there guilt,
Sure.
or is there shame attached to that? Is there like, it should have been me? Like, have you gone through that too?
You know, I understand a lot of people do. I did not go through that. I did not go through feeling it should have been me, not him. I had then a 9-year-old, you know, and she and I were and have always been very close. And my reaction was, what do I do for her? Because I'm mom and I have to, you know. But the reason that people thought it may have been me when that phone rang and they heard it was about something bad was because my crash had happened in 2002, and that was very severe. It was head on, wrong way driver. I was driving a British car, so the wheels on the other side. The other driver was driving an American car. So back farm road. It's actually, if you look at the cover of the Division Bell, it's pretty much that field around that cathedral,
Okay.
or in that vicinity. And I was trapped. You know, the car was smoldering. I woke up for a moment. I had a shattered sacrum, broken lumbar spine, rib, some jaw trauma, and I had a brain hemorrhage.
Wow.
So I woke up for a moment just to know I would die. Car, I could see smoke, probably from the airbags, but there was a lot of debris, or field debris and dirt, glass all over me. And looked down to see if my legs were still attached, because I had significant caudal equina, or caudal nerve root damage.
Sure.
And it was a period of years where I went from hospitalization to, you know, sit up for 10 minutes to go home, but then it's a wheelchair, it's a walker, it's doctors, it's getting nerve blocks, not a lot of long-term surgeries, but that certainly impacted my husband's life and career. And those little things add up. So where I'm finally, a couple months later, you know, I'm home, I'm out of the hospital, he can't go be deployed. I can't move at all yet. You know, I hadn't had a shower in a month other than wet wipes. He's doing these things for me. He took the caregiver role. So from 2002 until about 2007, I really struggled with the aftermath of my crash. I couldn't really have any more children. I couldn't continue my plans as a pilot. I was going to finish my commercial rating, do that. I had to find myself all over again. I had birds and falconry, working with birds of prey over there. So I was able to do that a bit, but it was up and down, and a lot of doctors prescribing a lot of pills. And I had a lot of tears over that 6 or 7 year period. And the family had experience with that. They saw how bad I was, you know, just the chronic pain would just about defeat me. And it did plateau, and it did slowly improve. So crash 2002, I go to Mayo Clinic 2007. I start doing my volunteer job for wildlife again. And I was actually finding my own rhythm, my own new life post crash. The morning he died, I was sailing with our neighbors for about an hour, and then I went fishing with a cast net out at the beach to catch bait fish for the birds, you know. So here I was doing so much better, but the hardships that we had around the crash are why people thought it was me when the phone rang.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
clarifies it.
Makes complete sense. But now that you've kind of laid out the physical trauma that you experienced, nearly dying, and I mean, being in such a horrific crash, and then expressing the fact that he was your caregiver, he obviously took on a lot of different roles that he necessarily didn't plan for one thing, but maybe not have been, and he may have rolled with it because that's the gentleman that he was, and because he was a strong guy, but he may not have necessarily wanted that. And I got chills. I'm so sorry that he had to you had to go through that, because that's terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible. And I think he always felt a little bit of guilt because my injuries happened at the hands of another military member overseas because of his job, So yeah, he felt like it's because of our lifestyle and that happening.
Is that why you were in England? Is that why you were in England at the time? Were you living there?
Yes.
Was he stationed there? Okay.
Sure was. Yep.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of, you said in the beginning about, there's no real word for it. I'm just going to say like suicide etiquette, I'll call it.
Sure.
You had talked to me through text before about, dealing with, how you dealt with certain things or how you felt about certain things, and how, maybe people don't know what to say or don't know how to say things. Can you just talk about that a little bit, that side of it, and maybe what you think could help, or what you may want other people to know?
Yeah, I think when somebody in your family, your spouse, child, or somebody dies from suicide, I know anyone will understand what I'm talking about when it seems like the people around them stare silently, and seem to be emotionally walking on eggshells, right? They don't want to say the wrong thing. A lot of people, I heard another guest of yours talking about how people can say that some really silly things like, well, that's the plan God had for them, or they're in a better place now. But even at the risk of saying the wrong thing, I think you're better off doing it. The survivor may react poorly in the moment if you really fuck up, but over time, it's much better that you were there than if you politely pull away. And I know in my experience, this was a shock and trauma that I had amnesia to for quite a while. I found him in a noose. Came home and the front door was locked. We don't lock the door if one of us is home. What's going on? Something is wrong. And go around to the laundry room. I pushed it open it. It's heavy. We had a Turkish carpet rolled against that corner. And in my mind's eye, it was like something's wrong, but I think the carpet fell in front of the door. Push it again. There's a thumb. No, the attic alcove pop out was right on the inside of that door, and he had hung himself through the eaves. So it was his body that I was pushing. And that room was marginally dark. It was daytime, but not a lot of light. So when I stuck my head in, it's my husband's face right there in my face. I couldn't remember that for I don't know how many months, to where the police, when they were down, I think I got a little sidelined, but I'll just go with explaining it to you. Wandered down to a neighbor's yard, actually the neighbor who I was good friends with, who had my daughter for a sleepover the night before with her kids. They were all still there playing in the backyard. My daughter is playing in the backyard. I can hear her giggling voice, and I'm in complete shock, staggering down the road to them as the police are back and forth. By that point in time, my brain had already not accepted this is my husband and he is now dead. And I'm asking the police, what are you going to do? He has to go to a hospital, and I'm envisioning him sitting at the dining room table giving his story as to why he did this, why he acted like he had died, and that they would take him off, right? Take him away somewhere. No, ma'am, he's dead. He died some time ago, they tell me. So I had complete amnesia. And when you're asking about how people should treat you or behave, so consider that I had a number of male friends, old friends, like good guys too, suddenly unfriend me because they had maybe jealous wives or whatever it was. When you go through a death like that, you are not out looking for men. That's not what you're doing. You have a very real human need, just as a soul in your body, to see another soul in another body and have some kind of super basic eye to eye, I care about you connection from them. That is it. You're not out looking to slut it up. You're not hitting on people. That's, as far as the hierarchy of need goes, you are bottom of the barrel, reconfiguring. It's morning, it's night, I'm alive, I drink water, everything hurts, just basics. That's it. So keep that in mind, really, with any kind of death or trauma. Don't make assumptions about where that person is or what they need. It's usually really basic. Just be nice to them, be there for them, and you don't have to speak.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you trust us to listen to this and trust us with your story. Thank you so much for sharing this. I know that these conversations, no matter how much time passes, are never easy to have. And I think it shows a lot of not only strength, but it shows a lot of your ability to connect with others by sharing your stuff, because by sharing your stuff, you're able to maybe allow someone else who hasn't faced a particular issue, maybe whether or not suicide or whatever, that shows them that, wow, I can be comfortable coming out and talking about this. But you have to be in a safe space to do it. And I'm glad that I'm grateful that it's this time that is okay for you. And I hope we didn't, tread too heavily on anything that you shared. We're going to finish up. We always, unless Tim's got anything else, do you have anything else that you want to add or ask, dude?
No, very well said on your part, because I think that's, we don't do this to drudge up feelings. We don't do this to put people on the spot or guilt or shame. We do it because, the reality of the situation is this happens.
Yeah. And that is what's helpful, is it's a fact, it's a reality. When someone dies like that, that's what I have. This real thing, very tangible death occurred, very traumatic. And someone approaching you with the knowledge that that is a fact of the reality that you're living with is so much more helpful than having to be concerned with how that other person feels. And I do a lot of that. I'm often when someone asks me, just say I meet someone and they ask me how my husband died, and I tell them, I feel bad for them that now I have to answer, because they're going to feel awkward once I do. I feel bad for them. Like, oh man.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this. I don't
want them to feel bad.
That's why we're doing this. We hope that there's less people that have to have those odd conversations, because and we hate the word normalize, but if you make something less, harsh, then, you can carry on and talk about it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. We're going to finish up with we end every podcast with 3 questions. So I'm going to let Tim ask the first one.
Do you have a favorite or least favorite word?
Basic. I use ameliorate a lot. So not a swear word. Swear word would, I don't know. The word ameliorate, I don't know what it is about it. I love it. I use it when I can.
Can you define, please?
Yeah,
Sure. She had nausea after the roller coaster ride, but I gave some Dramamine, and that has been ameliorated. So ameliorate, it's like to fix, but it has a nice ameliorate. It's a good word.
All right. That's the first ever on this one. We've heard some pretty unusual ones and then some pretty typical ones, but that's definitely, I'm gonna have to add that to my book of words.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put that in the show notes
weekly. Yeah.
Add that in the show notes, Will.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the Webster's dictionary, the definition from the web, and include it.
Do you have a least favorite?
A least favorite, I think stupid is probably being overused to describe anything that has disgust or disdain or is inappropriate. That's stupid. Let's be more specific, because we could call people that too, but if they're born stupid, hey, don't discriminate.
I like it.
Well said.
Well said.
Yeah.
We don't like to discriminate. That's why that's what stigma is. Stigma is discrimination. You know what I mean? That's what we're here to destroy.
Right.
Yes,
so the
idea
second
of
question,
right and wrong, good and bad.
That's right. So the second question is a very lighthearted one. Is it cat, dog, or other? And I think I have the answer for that, but maybe not.
Oh, cat by a mile.
Okay.
Cat by a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it about cats?
First off, they're living sculptures. Mine are as soft as rabbits, and they don't require love that's related to subservience, to that master servant, complete dependency. They don't have that dependency. They have a bond, and I like that. I love all animals. I do love dogs.
See, Tim?
I grew up with dogs.
See, Fernando just wants a bond, dude. That's all he wants to do.
And we bonded the other night. We have to set boundaries with that. That's all.
Yeah.
It's a good exercise in setting boundaries.
Exactly. I set boundaries with a cat.
Well, you can't do it with humans,
They
so you can do it with cats.
Exactly. You got to start
Cats will
somewhere.
walk right over them. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So if you could do anything for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, or if you would like to see something done to mental health as a whole, what would it be?
I would definitely change the stigma. I think that I'd create some kind of movement that aligns it with neurology overall, not as this separate figment of thoughts, because it isn't. It is really a subfield of neurology. When it comes right down to anxiety, you're talking about catecholamines in your body. Panic, you're talking about a physiological reaction. So even at the brain chemical level, you're talking about someone's neurology, and continuing to hold it up as this psychological, it's in the mind. I don't think that's doing any service. You even see that in healthcare. Oh, they're psych. That patient, no, nothing cardiac, no wounds, no, not this, not that. They're psych. They're just psych. Implying an irrelevance or like a choice.
Yeah, I get it.
Right, or a less than ship.
Less than.
Less than.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they don't have a heart problem. They're not going to immediately die. They're just mental.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be an either
almost like we
or.
can't fix them.
Mentally.
Yeah, almost like we can't fix them.
It's not either or. Someone isn't mentally healthy and stable, or they are not. There's a spectrum at any given day, at any given year, through everyone's lifetime. It's like the ocean. What condition is it in if we test the water right now? No one is in either or when it comes to mental health. Not one person.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That was freaking fantabulous.
Your insight, your insight is unbelievable.
That was a great answer.
I meant to, and I wanted to ask you this because I know that when it comes to the spine and the neck and things, and those things get injured, they can create like disconnects with your brain, because obviously that's all one system. In that neurological system runs from the back of your skull right down through your tailbone. Did you notice after your accident, did you notice any increase in your mental health issues without, I mean, obviously you were in such physical trauma, that your mental health probably wasn't even a thought because you were in so much pain all the time that's probably all you could think about. But did you notice that the depression or anything like overtook you? Was it,
Yeah.
because I can't imagine
I
having to learn how to
noticed.
walk again would have been very easy, and
Sure.
having to go through all that rehab. And
Well, I didn't truly learn to walk again. It was a slow progress and a lot of physical therapy with the bars and all, the typical image you see. I always knew how to walk. So it was just once the nerves could reconnect and I could control the muscles enough, it was a slow progress. But in terms of brain injury, the residual that I continue to deal with is my brain is like an old computer. If I even walk by a TV and there's a sudden crash or certain sounds, it's like I react physiologically with all those stress hormones and it shuts down for a minute. If there's too much noise, I can't really isolate where the one person talking to me is coming from. If I'm in a home and somebody has the TV blasting and they go to talk, I pick up the remote and mute it and say, I'm sorry, I have a hearing problem, I can't hear you. So disconnect psychologically, it would be hard to look back because there were so many medications they had me on and so much recovery going on with bones and everything. It would really be hard to know what was truly just brain. I do continue to have an awful lot of sleep inertia. So I have to plan good 2 to 3 hours before I need to be somewhere that I'm up, because I won't be safe to drive for the first hour. No substances, just don't feel with it. Feel like I'm coming out of a coma every morning a little bit. Yeah, noise. I have a hard time. Funny enough, I don't mind going, but I do have a hard time in Walmart, just because when you come around the aisles, that idea that somebody might be right there or coming at me. Now, I don't know if that's more trauma related or brain, but just try and keep things kind of on an even keel to minimize it all.
I haven't had a TBI that I'm aware of ever in my life, and I'm not even comfortable in Walmart, so that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was gonna say Walmart has that effect on most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stone mental illness. If you're fine with Walmart, probably.
I wonder if there's something you can do to ameliorate those feelings.
I think I've maxed out the amelioration of.
Wow.
I've maxed it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I do my breathing. I stay calm. But it is noticeable. You don't sustain something like that and just carry on like your old self.
No, and so much of that rebuilding your life. See, like obviously, it's so harsh because you have the beauty of being able to rebuild your life after such a tremendous event like that accident, and then you have such a tremendous loss on the other side. That yin and yang has got to have so much weight to it that you can't. It's probably hard for you to celebrate where you've been. Is it? Well, actually, I want to ask you: is it hard to celebrate where you've been because you have so much strength to be able to get through that, but yet you have such a devastating loss along with it? That have you been able to sit down?
I can go, and I'll probably do it today. Go to the beach, float in the water, and just look up and allow things, including my whole history, to just be. I can only be present right now. I can start feeling sorry for myself a little bit, of course.
Can't we all?
I can start, like, why didn't I have this? Why didn't I, any kind of trauma, there are many factors to how well you will cope. And one of the biggest ones, there's no getting around it, is your support structure. I had limited support structure, both after the crash and after losing my husband. That family on his side that I'm all close to, they're not here. They're all spread between 2 countries and a couple states. We were military, so I didn't have old friends here. They were all at the base and have since moved on. So I can feel a little sorry for myself. Like, well, why didn't I have that? If I still lived back home. Now, when I was up there, people came out of the woodwork. New Yorkers are some loyal ass people, let me tell you. So yeah, I don't get carried away. I can appreciate the growth. I can appreciate from whence I come, and but have a solid appreciation and now an ownership of my past. You know.
Wow, that's a great way. That's a great way to leave it too. Thank you so much for. Thank you so much. I know this has got to be heavy, and I hope you enjoy the beach and you enjoy floating in the water today. I can't wait to go to the beach in July when we go on vacation. Tim knows this. If I don't bring the salt water home with me, like for the next 3 or 4 months, like vacation sustains me for a good like 5-6 months. But I know I'm cycling if I don't bring it home. But this year I'm bringing it home. Damn it, I'm bringing it home.
Bring it home.
Bring it home.
The sun in the water is very healing. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Vitamin D, baby. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you. And there's nothing to add. Timmy, until next week, man, be well.
Be safe.
Be
above.
If you've lost someone to suicide, you may feel overwhelmed by grief, confusion, or even anger, but you are not alone. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention offers support in the weeks and months following a suicide. The Healing Conversations program gives those who have lost someone to suicide the opportunity to talk with a caring volunteer. Having experienced suicide loss themselves, our volunteers know firsthand the emotions associated with this type of loss. They can offer comfort and guidance, as well as community resources that may be useful on the path ahead. Healing Conversations are available in person, on the phone, or by video chat. To learn more about the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and how to schedule your own healing conversation, please visit afsp.org/healing conversations.